Okay, now we are recording. And as usual, we really encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat with your name and your organization. And we will answer all the questions in the chat after our speakers have finished. If we have enough time, and if not, we can continue the conversation via email, but we're going to try to do our best. Also, just a reminder that we have a calendar, a public calendar available with all the events of our network. We are going to share it in the chat really soon. So I'm going to keep the introduction short today, as we are shown by five speakers. We are really happy because today's session is quite practical. We really want to know how open data works in practice, and we are happy to have experiences from different governments and different civil society organizations, trying to learn about different initiatives and with specifics, in some cases, with a specific focus in interoperability. So without further to add, I will be presenting each speaker, and we're going to start our session with Zornitsa Manolova. She's the head of data quality management at the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation system, and she's going to tell us about their work and their project. So Zornitsa, you are the first speaker to start. The floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Renato, and thank you to the entire Open Data Charter team for giving me the opportunity to present today. So today's session, I will give a very brief intro into the global LEI system, the LEI, Legal Entity Identifier, and my organization, GLEIF, Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation. So, of course, I also focus on the topic of today's overall call and spend time on the main topic, interoperability, and how we support this. So following the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008, the question of risk exposure across global markets remained unresolved, highlighting the need for greater transparency in the financial transactions. Regulators across the globe asked the banks what are the consequences for them and how they are affected. And back then, nobody was able to give an answer to this question as nobody had the data needed to provide this information. G20 tasked the Financial Stability Board to create a list of measures to prevent similar situations in future. This is how the LEI, GLEIF, and the global LEI system were established by the Financial Stability Board. GLEIF is short for Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation. It is a non-for-profit Swiss foundation. Our mission is to manage a global network of LEI issuing organizations and ensure the operational stability of the global LEI system. In collaboration with the LEI issuing organizations, also sometimes related to them as local operating units or LOUs, and the Regulatory Oversight Committee, comprising public authorities from around the world, we shape the global LEI system, which is a unique example for a global public-private partnership. Currently, there are over 2.9 million LEIs recorded in the global LEI system. But what exactly is an LEI? LEI stands for Legal Entity Identifier. It is a 20-character alphanumeric code based on ISO standard 7442, designed for unique identification of legal entities. The code is unique for each entity, and each entity gets only one code. There is an established data quality management framework and several controls in place to ensure this statement. The LEI is permanent and once issued stays forever and cannot be reused for another entity, for instance. The LEI connects also to reference data, and it is also considered a public good. So the next two slides provide an example of a typical LEI record, including relationship information. Due to the time constraints we have today, I'll skip this section, but you're very welcome to explore the data set using the links provided on this slide. And of course, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So with that, I will move on the next section, which focuses on the topic of today's session, interoperability, enabled through identifier mapping. This is where the LEI brings significant value and truly makes a difference. The LEI is already linked to local business registration numbers natively as part of the LEI record. And in addition, this mapped to a broad range of other identifiers, such as the Open Corporates ID, QCC ID, S&P CIQ Company ID, ISO standards MIC and BIC code managed by SWIFT, or also the ISIN managed by ANA. And also it is incorporated in other global standards like the BOTS, the business beneficial owner data standard. Importantly, the LEI does not aim to replace any of these identifiers or the local identifiers, rather it acts as a connection layer, a bridge that links and makes those systems globally accessible and interoperable. All mappings are done in a close collaboration with the organizations issuing or managing the partner identifier. So they are also basically done at the source, which ensures high quality product. GLEIF also works actively with a network of data vendors to ensure that the LEI is also embedded into their system, increasing the reach and utility of the identifier across sectors and borders. Last but not least, I would like to share an initiative that is very close to my heart. In March of this year, during the Open Data Week, we launched a new initiative in partnership with Open Ownerships called GODIN, the Global Open Data Integration Network. Open Ownership is a non-for-profit organization that develops and promotes the beneficial ownership data standard. GODIN aims to advance global data interoperability and accessibility by fostering alignment across open data standards and encouraging active collaboration among participating members. How does the active collaboration means in practice? Supporting each other during public consultation, co-authoring submissions to conferences, tech sprints, and hackathons, and importantly, committing to a data mapping exercise between each participant's dataset and the legal entity identifier. So we warmly welcome other organizations to publish open data or develop open data standards to join GODIN, including governments, not governmental, and non-for-profit organizations, academic institutions, and private sector actors with public-facing data initiatives as well. And we believe that together we can support the principles of transparency, interoperability, and responsible data stewardship. So please get in touch also after the call. And yeah, thank you very much for the time and listening to me.
Thank you so much. So Zornitsa, it's been really interesting to learn about interoperability in such a specific topic. And me, myself, I would really like to explore a little bit more about the Global Open Data Integration Network. We also are huge fans of the work that Open Ownership is doing, so it should be really interesting. We are going to check the link. So thank you so much. Now I'm going to switch to Spanish to present our next speaker. Nuestra próxima oradora es Paula Fernández López, es analista en la Dirección
Our
de
next
Datos
speaker
Abiertos.
is Paula Fernandez Lopez. She's an analyst in the Directorate of Open
Argentina.
Data
Nos
of
va a presentar
Innovation
su
of the
trabajo
Ministry of
y
Innovation in
experiencia
Argentina that is going to
sobre
present her
Argentina.
lines of work and
Paula,
some specific examples.
no,
Paula,
le paso.
the floor is
Gracias.
yours. Thank you. Thank you very much, Renato and Mechi, for the invitation. And I'm going to share a very brief presentation. First and foremost, I'm Paula Fernandez Lopez, and I am an analyst in the Directorate of Open Data at the Secretariat of Innovation, Science and Technology of the Argentine Republic. And today I would like to share a couple of actions, actually lessons that we've learned over the last 3 years and a half, and the actions that we're currently implementing for the 2025 work period. I would like to share that we at the Directorate of Open Data of the Argentine Republic have three main lines of actions or goals. The first of them is to promote the publication of open data of public interest across all agencies of the federal government, always in line with certain quality and interoperability standards. And by that I mean both the international and national metadata standards applicable to the publication of such data. We attempt to improve the experience regarding access, search, reuse, and consumption of public data by the different actors in the ecosystem. And we're going to see specifically which actors I'm talking about and the ones that we would like to strengthen our relationship with moving forward. And finally, we develop services and technologies, attempting to improve the functionalities, the tools, and the resources available to us for the effective data publication and exchange. As for the first target, which is data publication, we have a national strategy in place, and it is national because it covers the publication of data of any agencies in the federal government. We at the Directorate provide technical and methodological assistance to any agency seeking to open their data, to consolidate them, to standardize them, and that they are doing it in compliance with certain operability and quality standards. In our directorate, we have this data and we publish them through our public open data portal, which is datos.gov.ar, developed based on the methodology of the Andean portal. And right now we are hosting over 6,600 files prepared by different organizations of the federal government or nodes of the federal public administration, as we call them. Of course, our main goal is to continue to expand our node network and keep on incorporating more data and to keep on learning. And our top priority is to strengthen the quality of the information we publish in terms of the quality of the data, the completeness of metadata, and also the availability of information that is strategic and of high value for the different sectors of the Argentinian population. The second objective that I mentioned relates to facilitating user experience, and that is making it easier to search and obtain that data. We have somehow consolidated a network of different nodes of the National Public Administration. We have a relationship basically with every agency and organization, and of course with provincial and local public agencies as well. And we organize periodic activities in order to co-create different action plans. And we do that particularly with national public organizations and CSOs. We also have different communication channels where we try to maintain our ecosystem up to date regarding any news, new data being published, and we do that also on social media, for instance, on X. But it is true that we need to expand our communications channels, so we are looking to improve this kind of communication and the way we disseminate all the news. We are also seeking to update our guidelines and good practices for the publication of data because we consider that to be fundamental. Another project looking at the future is a weakness we identify at the federal government, and that is how we relate with the private sector, because we know that they use our data, and we also need at the federal government to have access to certain data generated by the private system for decision-making purposes and for policy making. Finally, I was trying to be very short, but I wanted to share 3 different services, products, and technologies that we have at our Directorate, and we are looking to update them. We want to make sure that they keep up with the needs of users and data issuing agencies, and also for citizens that are interested in accessing the data. On the one hand, as I said, the development of a portal, which is the Andean portal or Portal Andino, that is currently undergoing a refurbishment in order to enhance user experience. We know that there are several features that need improvement in terms of how data is presented in the portal and the type of search that is enabled. But this portal has been with us since 2016, which was the year when the first open data policy was promoted in Argentina. And it is the portal that we currently use for the National Open Data Portal. And then we have 2 different APIs that I wanted to share with you. The first one is time series API that enables data flow and exchange and has some time indicators, and another API, which is the GeoRef API, that I thought interesting to share. It is an API that is being actively used in order to improve endpoints and functionality and allows to standardize geographic data in the Argentine Republic to make it interoperable. So far, it has had over 290 million historic queries since the API was created. So, as I said, we are currently updating the features of our portal. We would like to expand the endpoints of the API, particularly of the web-based version, and the type of geographic data that is contained there. And we also would like to expand the reach and use of the APIs by public agencies. Some final considerations that I sort of anticipated, but they have to do basically with lessons learned. We want to keep on expanding the amount of data that we communicate in the portal, also provide quality data in open format, assessing metadata, and making sure that that data is susceptible of being reused for the duration of value added and innovation by different sectors of civil society. As I said earlier, we at the federal government consider it a priority to expand the communication channels and the communication strategies, particularly with the private sector, and continue to develop, to the extent possible, every single technology in order to strengthen the IT infrastructure, in order to keep on fostering innovation and pursuing further this open data policy. That is all. Thank you very much. And this is our email at the Directorate of Open Data. And if anyone would like to discuss this further, we can organize a meeting. And that is also my personal email address, should you have any question. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paula, for your presentation. There are a lot of takeaways, but some that I would like to underscore, particularly the importance of working on a national strategy, because there's always the open government session that has to do with published data, but securing interoperability and that flow of information across different agencies is always a huge challenge. And there's also the challenge of identifying as a user the private sector, because we know the private sector uses the data and we need to find the best possible way in order to relate to the private sector and to be able to co-create that value.
I'm going to switch to English again to present my next speaker. The next speaker is Annabelle Austin. She's an analyst on the information and data governance, data and digital policy sector at the Office of the Chief Information Officer and on the Treasury Board of the Canada Secretariat. So, Annabelle, we are really happy to have you here, and the floor is yours for your presentation. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm Annabelle Austin. I'm an analyst with the Office of the Chief Information Officer at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. I would like to thank ODC for allowing me to present today. I'm really glad to be here to talk about some of the work that we're doing to strengthen transparency and open data across the Government of Canada. As the title of my presentation suggests, from strategy to standards, setting the stage for transparency and open data, we're on a journey to turn big picture commitments into clear, actionable standards that support openness and accountability. So I'll walk you through how we're doing that, the key principles behind our approach, and what it means in practical terms for departments and for Canadians. So just a quick overview. I'll start with the trust and transparency strategy. This is our high-level framework that guides work across the government of openness, accountability, and ethical use. It's really about creating the right conditions for building public trust in how we manage the use of public data. Then I'll move into a discussion on the open data, focusing on the open data draft maturity model. This is a practical tool that we're developing to help departments assess where they're at and identify areas of growth in their open data practices in a consistent way. And finally, I'll introduce the data reference standards, also known as DRS. These are technical and policy aligned standards that support better data governance and interoperability, which are key to making transparency and data reuse truly possible. So the Trust and Transparency Strategy was officially published in June 2023. It provides the government with a wide approach to building and maintaining public trust. At its core, the strategy sets out a shared vision for federal organizations, one where transparency, integrity, and responsible data stewardship are built into everything that we do. It's about aligning our efforts across the government to strengthen transparency and improve how we govern data and ultimately build public confidence in our institutions. So let me give you a quick overview about the key drivers and objectives behind this strategy. Starting with the drivers, this strategy is meant to bring everything together. It helps communicate what's happening across the government in a clear, coordinated way and support longer-term alignment across departments. It also builds on existing reporting mechanisms like the National Action Plan, as well as the Access to Information Modernization Plan to help track progress and impact. As for the strategic objectives, they focus on fostering a culture of openness and improving transparency practices, modernizing policy to strengthen accountability and clarify decision-making, as well as creating more opportunities for public participation. Now on to open data. Let's take a moment to look at the commitments in the Government of Canada's National Action Plan for 2022-2024. So this national action plan was a 2-year roadmap co-developed with civil society and the public. It lays out concrete actions to make government more open, transparent, and accountable. The Treasury Board of Canada has led several of these, especially in the space of open data. Now moving on to the draft open data maturity model, which was the first commitment. This slide introduces the draft open data maturity model, which is what we're currently developing to help departments assess and strengthen their open data practices. The idea is to give teams a clear, structured way to understand where they're at, identify gaps, and work towards a more advanced and consistent open data management. The model is organized around 5 key areas, which are leadership, governance, quality, collaboration, and management, all grounded in the established accountabilities of the chief data officers. So it aligns well with the roles and responsibilities that departments are already familiar with. It's still in its draft form, but we're currently working with our Open Data Advisory Group to get feedback and refine it. The input is helping us make sure that the model is practical, flexible, and relevant across different contexts. I'm sure that you are all familiar with the ODI's models. Ours is a little bit similar, but going to be applied into more of a Government of Canada context. So eventually the model will include clear levels of progress for each area, making it easier for departments to self-assess and take concrete steps forward. Data reference standards. These are also known as DRS, and they are an important role to play in supporting open data and building trust. When we're making data open, it's not just enough to publish it. We need to make sure that it's understandable, usable, and consistent. So that's where the data standards come in. So some people might ask, what are data standards? Simply put, data standards are rules that help us make data more easier to work with. They ensure consistency so that data can be shared and understood across different systems and organizations. These standards guide us as to how we describe, structure, and represent data, which helps us avoid confusion and keeps everyone on the same page. For example, we use common terminology, so instead of using the terms or same things, we stick to labels such as data sets. In short, they help us make data truly usable, not just available. On this slide, you'll see 8 data reference standards that have already been published in the GC Data and Metadata Reference Standards website, also linked on the page. These include provinces and territories, industry classification systems, code names, countries, and many more. I would also like to add that we're also developing an additional 30 standards covering everything from gender and sex information to organization roles, and code names. These are being developed in close collaboration with departments, data stewards, and experts, and will roll out progressively in the months ahead. So we've now reached the questions slide as well as the thank you slide. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. This has been really, really interesting. I was taking notes of a lot of things, but 2 things I would like to highlight. One is, especially when you're working from the public sector, the importance of incorporating trust, in the value of trust in your strategies. And also, I would really like to dive deep in the open data maturity model. I think it's really, really great that you have created this tool to assess how different agencies are working and trying to help them to improve their work, and also the connection with an open government partnership commitment. I think and the co-creation with civil society organization. I think it's really, really interesting. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'm going to switch now to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Beverley Hatcher-Mbu. She's a director of policy in Development Gateway. That it's an organization that we really, really look into their work, and we are really, really fans of what you do. So we are really happy to have you here and to listen about your project. So thank you, Beverley. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Renato. I'll try to live up to that. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of the working group. I've joined many meetings, so it's nice to be on the other side of the table. So my talk today is going to be around demystifying interoperability, not because I don't think people in this group know what interoperability is, but there's a big gap between the concept and how important it is, and then how we look to implement interoperability meaningfully in data sets and systems. So I'll talk about work that DG is doing in Ethiopia in the livestock sector to illustrate some key points. A little bit about DG, Development Gateway, if you're not already familiar with us. We are a mix of program managers and software developers and scrum masters, and we build, advise, and do research. So we've partnered with governments in over 40 countries to help think about how you get the right data in the right hands and at the right time. So sometimes that has meant developing data governance policies. In other cases, that's meant development of dashboards, and sometimes all three, as you'll learn a little bit more about. I want to take a second to pause. I've had some great presentations, so my job also at this point is to keep everybody awake. I want everybody to take 10 seconds to estimate how many applications are on your phone right now. Post an estimate of your numbers in the chat. I'm curious to see how many tools people are using, or maybe that people have in their phones. Okay, I've got 83, 30, 256. First of all, that's an incredible estimate. I've got 40, 47, 100. I think that sounds about right. 23, 30. Some people are very disciplined here. If you've got anything less than 50 applications, that's pretty impressive. 25, 40, 30. Excellent. Why I love doing that exercise is because that's exactly why interoperability matters so much. There are all of these apps that give us all kinds of opportunities to make decisions, but it can be really overwhelming. And if you put yourself in the position of a policymaker who maybe has an app for every different piece of agriculture, from livestock to crops to fertilizer and seeds, how do we make it easier, in particular for policymakers, to be able to take those different inputs and make decisions based on them? This is part of the framing that shaped how we began working with the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia about 2 years ago in 2022, with the idea to increase access to timely, relevant, and interoperable data in a better centralized or a better organized livestock information system. The easiest way to describe it there is data throughout the livestock value chain in 5 key systems. This is where most of the data use cases sit. So we're working with all 5 of the system owners to standardize their information, govern how that information is stored, and then channel that into a centralized dashboard. Some of that data is open, some of that data isn't. So what we're really dealing with also is the idea that how can we still gain insights from data that may not be publicly available, but the high-level insights are still of value. So we've worked really hard with the different systems, especially where subject matter is more sensitive, like around disease information. There's a lot of national concern about the rate of disease and how it's spreading, but people need to understand the data around disease in order to act quickly and act accordingly. So we've worked with the government. That's part of our data governance engagement with them, is to say that's fine if parts of this are confidential, but how can we aggregate information with other data inputs, other open data inputs, so that your decision makers, whether it's policymakers, farmers, and people who support them, can still make decisions in a timely manner. We basically have focused on 3 things in our work. There are 3 building blocks, as it were, of interoperability: standards, governance, and the technology. So I'll talk briefly about those, and I'll share the link to our case study at the end in case you'd like to read more. Around the data standards, we've learned 3 things. We've already heard really compellingly from our colleagues, from Annabelle, from Paula, about all the different ways standards come into play to make open data usable. What we learned in practice, coming in with the 5 systems and trying to bring all these pieces together, is that standardization really takes time. It's one thing to have a standard in place. It's another to do the change management to get individual data owners to use it. We spent probably about 18 months working with the system owners to explain why this mattered, what the benefits were for them. There can be a lot of fatigue, especially in open data communities, around producing data and not knowing if people are going to use it. And a part of having standards is to help make that transition and say, you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. If you are engaged with standard setting processes, you can make sure that your information gets used and used in the right places. Standards really are less about the data in some ways and a lot about the people. And this is really an interpretation of a really great blog that Open Data Charter's executive director Nati Karfi wrote, I think, a year or 2 years ago for the World Bank around how we must think about interoperability just as much about data, but specifically about people. So much of our work with the standards, so what you see in the image is the different steps that we took to bring the data standard together for the livestock sector. So much of it was about bringing the key data producers along the way. Standards ultimately need to be a win-win scenario as much as possible for sustainability. We don't just want standards in place, we want people to keep using them long after the program ends so that the data can continue getting used and creating a bigger picture. So how can we identify early on what are the use cases or incentives for committing to using standards and helping to amplify those? This is some of what we found in that process. Data governance, again, that connection of people, processes, and data. One of the things that we tried to push for, these are sort of 3 or the 4 key findings that we found around data governance. So far, it's still an ongoing process. That piecemeal data is really hard on interoperability. For insights to be gained from interoperable data sets, they need to be connected regularly, not in a one-off, not in an irregular basis, because that's what keeps users coming back to use that data and take advantage of it. Data standards are awesome, but we have to keep going. We have to think about what comes next. A layer that we found once we had spent 18 months putting a livestock data standard together, we still had to think about how did these standards butt up against the data management processes and practices of each of the systems, and how do we work with them to bring those into alignment. If one of your systems of 5 is all confidential, nothing is open, nothing is accessible, there are more requirements for even other government agencies to use that information, then it's going to make it really difficult for standards to be operationalized. Which leads to point 3, that data governance doesn't occur in a vacuum. And we really need to understand what's there and build from there. Sometimes there's an expectation, especially coming externally, if you're working in resource-constrained environments, that government agencies either don't have structures in place, but there's always so much more nuance. If working in Ethiopia has taught me anything, there's always so much more nuance than meets the eye, and we really need to understand where people are and build from there, because that's part of, again, what does that change management to encourage a data use ecosystem rather than just a one-off structure or approach. And lastly, we don't have to wait. I think there are more than, I think that I shouldn't use specific sayings that are difficult to translate. I don't know what the Spanish equivalent is, but they say in English, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to approach it. You can invest heavily in national, whole of government level policies, but sometimes the political will or the timing isn't there. So how can we build shared frameworks from the ground up out of programs and investments that help establish that culture in the meantime? These things are very scalable. They don't only have to be limited to livestock, for example. And lastly, but not least, I am a data nerd. Technology is my happy place. We did a really strong deep dive on the technology, and I think this is where it gets the most interesting, because there's good tie in there to digital public infrastructure. So often when we went in to do this work, no one had an idea of what good digital public infrastructure looks like. There's so much that technologists and others can learn from the open data space about understanding like what makes for really usable open data. I think Annabelle referenced you want to make sure that it's ethical, it's responsible, that it's usable in formats that can connect easily. So how do we bring that into how we understand what technology is going to help make interoperability possible? Interoperability isn't just about, again, I keep emphasizing this, isn't just about the data sets, it's also about the systems in which they're stored. How open are they? How scalable are they? If we have 1,000 data points today, but we want 1 million data points tomorrow, can the technology scale alongside that? And so much of that goes into governmental planning and policy making to make sure that the building blocks underneath that critical data and that critical usage can adjust accordingly. Smart technology decisions also build trust and are really around improving transparency and responsiveness. If we want to move into a world with more digital-driven citizen services, we have to think about how the technology enables or makes more difficult interoperability in real time. So some of what you see in that table, and that's embedded in the case study link that I'll share, gives a little bit of a rubric for how we've analyzed some of these issues, on-site hosting versus cloud, the sovereignty issues, the maintenance issues. That these are the things that maybe people don't immediately think about managing interoperability across government systems, but are critical pieces of the decision-making process. This is my favorite example that I like to use. A dashboard going offline because of improper maintenance isn't a minor inconvenience. It can really damage citizen and stakeholder trust. One of the 5 systems we were working with kept going offline, and no one could figure out why. And it turned out a cleaner was coming in and was unplugging the server on a Friday evening, but no one realized it was happening, and it took each time 10 days, 15 days to figure out how to get the dashboard back online. Sometimes lack of trust isn't just about whether the data is available and interoperable and in a usable format. Is it where we reliably expect to find it? And if you repeatedly can't find it, what does that do to trust and opportunity? So these are the kinds of things when people are, sometimes the tech or talking about service is not as sexy maybe as talking about other items, but these are the kinds of considerations that we want to think about, that the ultimate goal is about being citizen and user driven. How can we maintain that trust and transparency? So I mentioned this is my last slide. I know I'm getting up there in time. Right now, there are a few thousand data points from the livestock sector, but the goal is one day to have millions of data points, to expand to quantity and quality and all kinds of indicators that the government is not yet collecting. So when we think about interoperability of the data sets, of the structures of the people, we want these to scale over time. We want the Ministry of Agriculture to be positioned to not have to redo their technologies or redo their data governance structures every year because they're trying to keep up with this massive growth. So how do we build for that future in mind safely, but in an organized fashion that allows for scale and growth? You survived. Thank you so much. I'm going to unshare and drop a link to the paper, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions people have.
Thank you so much, Beverley. This has been really, really interesting. It's great to learn about such a practical approach and a specific topic of a global civil society organization working with the national government and collaborating to improve interoperability. And I was taking notes of a lot of ideas, but I really like the connection on the sustainability of the projects and the systems and the generation of public trust, because if the projects and the systems don't work, it's going to be really, really complicated to feed that relationship. Everything you share is really related to our work when we work on specific topics like with standards on anti-corruption or to generate information for climate action. We bring a benchmarking of different international standards, but actually we also try to meet with the different stakeholders on the government that we're working on, because they may not have all the data sets at that moment, and it's really important to work together on a data prioritization to really understand what they have and what they can achieve in the following months. So that's I think that combination of bringing the standard, but also really understanding what we have in the table and what we can work with. It's really interesting. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to switch to Spanish to present our last speaker of today. El próximo orador, entonces,
and our next speaker today is Darwin Quispe Llancacuro, the coordinator of data governance and infrastructure for the government of Peru, and he's going to be sharing about some of the initiatives that they are promoting in Peru. Thank you so much, Darwin, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much for your introduction. First and foremost, I wanted to greet every one of the participants. It is an honor to be part of this panel today. I'm Darwin Quispe, and I am honored to lead the Open Data team at the Secretariat of Government of Peru. And I wanted to share with you how we've been working at the Council of Ministers on everything related to governance, interoperability, and citizen participations for data management and open data management. First, I wanted to share a little bit about the regulatory framework and the national context in Peru. We have a national policy for digital transformation that is going to be enforced up to 2030, and that policy serves to guide our country's efforts towards more integrated, interoperable services and citizen-driven. So this is the policy we have that guides every one of the actions that we have at country level, and that is also supported by other legal frameworks. We have a digital government framework and other standards that promote data governance in the country. In our country, we also have the National Data Center that was created as a strategic agency to articulate data governance, interoperability, and platform strengthening. For instance, the Open Data Platform. Along those lines, we also promote a national data infrastructure aimed at guaranteeing interoperable public services that are safe and sustainable throughout time, and with the data provided by public agencies themselves, because they are the ones that build and that are part of this data structure. Some of the initiatives that we're currently promoting at the Council of Ministers, for instance, when it comes to platforms, one of our key platforms is the National Open Data Platform that is available at datosabiertos.gov.pe that allows all entities to publish high-value data sets subject to international standards, promoting transparency, citizen participation, and innovation. We have another one that is called GeoPeru. GeoPeru is a national georeference data platform that it manages and consolidates the country's information based on interoperability standards. It is useful because it allows us to make decisions with a territorial approach. Also, at the Secretariat, we have another platform that is called the Digital Government Platform that seeks to build a centralized service and digital solution system to be used by all public agencies. And also looking at the future, we are promoting another initiative that is called Reliable Digital Territories that seeks to make data, identity, and digital services combined in order to promote inclusive and evidence-based development at the local level. That is, at the subnational level, we want every single entity to be able to share and exchange information in order to keep on building this platform. In terms of awards or recognitions, we promote different awards at country level as a strategy in order to promote the technical publication of high data value and their use by our citizenry. These kind of initiatives are supplemented with decentralized projects such as awareness campaigns, specialized training to public entities, capacity building programs that seek to bridge gaps and guarantee an inclusive approach. In addition to that, we organize different thematic workshops and technical trainings, always with a view to building a database culture and to enable different environments where citizens can
Perdón
flourish
por
based on the use
interrumpirte,
of
Darwin,
data.
pero creo que no
I'm
te
sorry
funciona
to interrupt you, but I think you're not changing your
perdón.
slides.
No se cambian los slides.
The slides are not
Ok,
changing.
ok.
Tal vez es porque no está en pantalla completa o algo. Puede ser. Ahí sí, ahí vemos,
Okay,
que
Sí.
cambian.
there you go.
Sí,
Ok, ok.
perfecto.
Okay, that's better.
Ya, ok, disculpen. Entonces,
Sorry about that.
para no retrasar mucho, igual voy a seguir haciendo la presentación. Les
I'm gonna
comentaba
move
las diferentes
along.
plataformas que tenemos.
And I was talking about the different
Principalmente
platforms we
datos
have,
abiertos y
the
plataforma de datos
National
georreferenciados.
Open Data
También tenemos
Platform,
diversos
the
reconocimientos a
georeference
nivel
national
país para promover
platform,
el uso de datos
and I
abiertos.
was also talking
Por
about
parte de la
the
ciudadanía
recognition
también.
awards
Y
in order
también
to promote the
hemos
use of open
utilizado diversos
data
mecanismos
across
de innovación.
our
Hemos organizado
country through
diversos
different
retos de
mechanisms. We've
innovación,
organized different
hackathons,
challenges,
premios,
hackathons,
de innovación, entre otros.
and other innovation initiatives.
También, como les comentaba, contamos con la Plataforma Nacional de Datos Abiertos.
And as I said, we have our
alrededor de 3.900 datasets
National
publicados en la
Open Data
plataforma,
Platform. We have
diversas
approximately
entidades públicas en todos los niveles de gobierno.
4,000 data
trabajando
sets
mucho por
across
mejorar la
different
calidad de
government
los
agencies.
datos,
We are striving
incorporando, por ejemplo,
to
metadatos para
improve
cada dato,
the quality of our data, incorporating
y también
metadata
cumpliendo
for
con los
all data
estándares,
sets,
¿no? de
and also
publicación.
complying with all
Otro tema
publication
importante también que
standards.
quería mencionarles
Something
es el
else
reconocimiento
that I wanted to
internacional de datos
mention is the
abiertos, que es un evento
International
que
Open
hacemos
Data
cada año
Recognition, which is an event that we do
y
on
nos
an
atrae
annual
muchos eventos
basis,
de muchas entidades
and that
que
has
quieren participar y publican sus
been
datos
very
para
successful. Many
participar y ganar
entities
este
are seeking to
reconocimiento, ¿no?
participate and
Entonces
to earn
es un
this
buen ambiente, es un buen
recognition.
espacio.
So it is a
Y
good
ese reconocimiento
space,
promueve la
a good
recopilación de
environment,
datos con
and
acompañamiento
it
técnico
promotes
de parte de
technical
nosotros y
supports
activa su uso
by
mediante
every one of
un
us and
hackathon
activates
nacional
the use
que es abierto a la
through
ciudadanía, donde
a
cualquier
hackathon that
ciudadano
is open
puede
to citizens and
desarrollar
where every
soluciones a partir
citizen
de
may
los datos
develop
que
solutions
comparten
based on
las
the
entidades
data
públicas
shared by
participantes
public
en el evento, ¿no?
agencies.
Por ejemplo, en la última edición
And
del año 2024, contamos con la participación de
in
más
the
de
last 2024
204 entidades
edition, we
públicas
had the
y académicas,
participation
entre las
of
cuales clasificaron 65
over
en la segunda fase
2,000
del
public and
reconocimiento
academic
y como resultado
agencies,
final se generaron más
and the
diversas
final
propuestas en áreas
outcome
claves, ¿no?
was
Como por ejemplo
different
en salud,
proposals
educación, igualdad
such
de
as
género
education,
y
health, gender
sostenibilidad, ¿no? En
equality,
base a
and
las
sustainability
soluciones
based
propuestas
on the
por los
solutions
ciudadanos.
proposed by citizens.
Además, también lanzamos una datathon
In
que
addition
se
to
llama
that, we
Exprésate Perú con Datos. Es una
launched
competencia nacional
another
que
national
incluye directamente ayuda a los
competition
ciudadanos con los
called
datos
Peru
abiertos.
Expresses
Gracias a,
itself with
esta,
data,
a
another
este evento,
datathon.
recibimos más de
And
200
thanks to this
propuestas de
event, we
soluciones
received over
utilizando datos
200 proposed
abiertos
solutions based
y
on the
muchas de
use of
esas
open data,
fueron diseñadas
and
por
many of
jóvenes
them were
estudiantes de
designed
regiones, ¿no?
by
del interior del país.
youngsters and students from the
Estos
interior
son
of the country.
algunos valores de esta
These are
datathon.
just
Como les
some
comentaba,
of the
recibimos más de
numbers
200
regarding that datathon.
propuestas y como
We
pueden ver
received over
también
200
muchas de ellas
proposals,
estuvieron
as I said
alineadas a los
earlier, and many of
objetivos de la
them were in
ODS.
line with the ODS.
Y por otra parte, en temas de avances normativos, también
And in terms
actualmente nos
of
encontramos en el
regulatory
proceso de
progress, we're
elaboración de la
currently
Estrategia
in the
Nacional de
process
Gobierno
of
de Datos, que está
elaborating
planificada
our
para
national
ser
open
aprobada
data
y publicada en
governance
noviembre de este año.
policy that
Entonces vemos
was
un
set
instrumento
to be
clave que nos va a
published in
servir
November
para
this year. It's
fomentar
going
la
to be a key
planificación y
instrument that will
gestión
guide the
y el
implementation, the
aprovechamiento
management,
estratégico de los
and the
datos a nivel
strategic
nacional.
use of
Y
data
además
at the
también
national level.
estamos construyendo
And
modelos
in addition to
de
that,
evaluación de
we are
madurez de
building
gobierno de
a
datos para el uso
maturity
de las entidades
evaluation
públicas
model to be used by
para
our
poder medir
public
su nivel de
agencies in
avance
order to measure
y
the
aceptar
progress they've
sugerencias
made, and
para la
also to
mejora
provide
por parte de las
suggestions
institucionales
to
en
enhance
temas de
institutional
gobernancia de datos.
improvements in terms
También
of data
estamos
governance.
elaborando otros instrumentos técnicos
We
como
are also
lineamientos para la
elaborating
calidad
other
publicación de datos
technical
abiertos
guidelines
que
for
van a
the
servir para
publication of
establecer
open
estándares
data
mínimos
that will
para
set
garantizar
to
la
lay down
interoperabilidad
minimum
y la
standards in order
trazabilidad
to
y
guarantee
la objetividad
traceability,
también de los datos.
interoperability, and usability of
Y por
data.
otra parte también estamos en el proceso de
And
mejoramiento de las
we are
plataformas
currently in the
de
process
circulación
of
de esos datos.
strengthening the
Entonces
platforms that I
esto
mentioned
también implica
earlier.
mejorar la
That
infraestructura
is why we
tecnológica,
planned
la
to
usabilidad de las
improve
plataformas
the usability of these platforms, always seeking to enhance efficiency, publication, and use of the data. All of that has been carried out with an approach of sustainability, not only as a mechanism for transparency, but also considering data as a strategic asset among every entity in order to create value and to promote informed decision-making and fuel innovation from and towards citizens. Some lessons learned along the road. First of all, discussing the importance of interoperability as underscored by the rest of the speakers. Interoperability is key. We need to standardize, and it's also important to talk about governance. We need to have some sort of governance on the data being managed. And that also implies some technical support by us, always with the objective of enhancing interoperability and increasing participation by citizens and agencies, and promoting the sustainability of these initiatives. It's also important to bear in mind innovation by citizens that always have some proposals to make. That is why it's so important, because it fuels impact and it materializes through these initiatives, such as data zones that have allowed us to discover the ideas of our citizens that may be beneficial for the state itself. And another important issue is sustainability, that is institutionalization. We need clear standards at country level. We need to develop different skills, and we also need to articulate across different stakeholders, not only in the state, but also private sector, the academia and civil society. And therefore, we need to develop these good practices so that they are sustainable in time. So that's pretty much all I had to share. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias por la presentación. Creo que es
Thank you very much.
para nosotros poder
I think it's extremely useful.
una estrategia que cuenta con una parte normativa, con una parte de plataformas, con ejercicios.
It's very good to have this kind of idea with the different lines of everything you are doing. I was particularly interested because this is something that we're working on, this combination between open data and services. I'm beginning to look into digital public infrastructure.
Así que ojalá poder conocer más
And
de ello en el futuro. Voy a cambiar inglés para
I'm going to switch to English right now so that we can close the meeting.
I want to thank a lot all of the speakers for your insightful presentations today. We are really sorry that we don't have more time for a Q&A session, but we wanted to have a pretty packed session today because of the topic that was open data in practice. We wanted to have different examples and different practices from governments and also from civil society organizations. But we are going to make sure that you all receive all the presentations, the videos, and the contacts if you want to keep the conversation going. And also, I would like to invite you to our next session before the summer break that we have in August, that is going to be related to data created by non-governmental actors. So we're going to inform you soon about the lineup. So thank you so much again, everyone, and hope to see you again soon in our next session. Have a nice day, night, or
happy holiday.
Wherever you are.
Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.